honored to have with us today Israel's health minister, Yuli Edelstein, which is actually for his first interview since taking up the role just several weeks ago. Minister Edelstein, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm curious what's been going on with the coronavirus in Israel's fight to stop the spread. A few weeks ago, we were told we're #1 in the world, or we're doing some of the best work in the world. And then we went from extreme closure to an extreme opening, but it seems like we're losing maybe control. You just the other day spoke about how we're already in the midst of a second wave. What's happened?
I think that the Israeli government did a very good job as far as fighting COVID-19 was concerned. We opened pretty fast, that's true. On the other hand, we didn't have any reasons not to do so. The numbers were very low. But as it happened in most countries that went through the same process, the numbers went up. We have to keep in mind that, as one of the senior doctors said to me, we don't know practically anything about this virus, so it's not such a shame to change your opinion. It's not such a shame to say, I thought A and now I think B. So that's exactly what is happening. Right now, we have strange numbers of more and more people who get infected by the virus. At the same time, we have stable numbers of those who are hospitalized and those who have to be treated with ventilators and through all kinds of special medical procedures. So we still not necessarily know how to explain that. We are very cautious. We are checking ourselves all the time. But having said all that, I think we do have to keep in mind that we can't ruin the economy just because we're scared of the virus.
Right. Although one of the things that people in the WHO, the World Health Organization, said pretty early on, excuse me, during this pandemic, is that you got to move fast, right? You can't take your time in making decisions. And it seems that over the last few weeks, we've seen the numbers go up, but we had to open up the economy. And I wonder if that might be because Israel was one of the first countries that really clamped down in a tight, tough, extreme closure, closing down the skies, not letting people into the country, keeping us to a 100-meter radius around our homes for a period of time. And then we went really fast and we reopened. Was that maybe a mistake in how quickly we reopened?
I still can't talk in terms of mistakes or right measures because I think we'll only know the long run. And just imagine that we would keep the country in the closure for another month, and now we wouldn't have even sufficient budget for the same demands of the health ministry I'm heading right now.
Right.
So it's all connected, and that's why when I bring my recommendations to the cabinet, I always say that I'm not trying to take the extreme position of the health ministry with the hope that there will be some compromise. From the very beginning, I'm trying to see the interests of the country as a whole, and definitely keeping in mind that health is prior to everything, but at the same time, if we are talking about certain closures or certain moves or our reluctancy to open certain areas, we have to always keep in mind what does minimal damage to the economy.
Is that possible still? Is there a way to find that right balance, do you think?
I think it's
possible. Because the health ministry, sorry to interrupt, the health ministry is always going to be more stringent, right? They're always going to say, close down more, do more to keep people healthy and to keep the numbers down. And there's going to be other people and other proponents of a different approach.
The responsibility is all ours. And by the way, I can't say that, say, the finance minister, economy minister should be necessarily on my side. They see, and they will be judged, by the way, by the performance of the Israeli economy. So there's always this kind of a dialogue. Having said all that, I think that there is an understanding that the challenge is a mutual challenge. I bring the professional view of the ministry, and by the way, let's always keep in mind there are all kinds of people that talk about the virus, some of them even professors, and they appear on the TV. Mm-hmm. But the responsibility is of the health ministry.
Right.
And all the rest is, an interesting explanation or an interesting insight. The responsibility lies with the health ministry.
Well,
that's why we have to take.
I want to get to a moment in a moment to how you even found yourself in the health ministry, which I think is interesting. But before that, quickly after you took office, we saw a 180-degree turnaround within the health ministry in terms of testing and in terms of tracking, right? And finding those who are infected and studying exactly where they were to be able to get stop the spread of the virus. Now, something that was just a couple days ago, we saw 19,000 tests in a single 24-hour period, when at the peak of the virus, we were lucky as a country if we got to 5,000. Now we're one of the best countries in the world, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of ranking of testing. How did you bring about that change? Because we were told for a long time that the professional staff within the ministry, certain individuals, were opposed to massive testing, but you managed to change that very quickly.
I decided upon the day of entering the ministry, that during the first week I'll meet all the senior staff of the ministry, and second week I'll meet professionals, doctors from the Israeli health system, not necessarily affiliated with the ministry. Mm-hmm. And with these two things combined, the opinions I heard in the ministry, the opinions I heard outside, it became pretty clear to me that I have to take the decision and enlarge at least the number of tests. I do have to say, and I'm sorry for quoting myself, but I said at one of the first meetings in the ministry that I may not be an expert on health, but I am an expert on Israeli society. And we have to always see what the society expects from us and whether it's ready to cooperate with us or not. It's not just, that we give orders and people say, yes, sir.
Right.
So there was great expectation, and there was no serious explanation why the tests should be on that level of 3,000-4,000.
That was a mistake, that it was low for such a
Once
long
again, I refuse to talk in terms of mistakes, and that was good for the time when.
So now the strategy that you're coming with is massive testing, increased tracking. Right?
Absolutely, but even before that, I do have to say that haven't I taken that decision, we would never know that there is a serious problem with labs. And the moment we went up to 10, 11, 12 tests a day, it turned out that the labs are not exactly
10, 11, 12,000, you mean?
Yeah, 10, 11,000 a day. It very quickly turned out that the labs are not exactly providing the answers in a short period of time as demanded. Mm-hmm. So we had to change certain things, to bring new staff there, to strengthen the labs, to find the new labs like MyHeritage and the others to make them part of the effort. And now, exactly as you said, we are concentrating on tracking, on fast tracking of the whole circle of those who were in contact with someone tested positive on COVID-19. And we brought about 280 students from medicine, paramedics, to be part of that effort. Okay. And we hope that the tracking will be fast. Having said all that, we have to honestly keep in mind that if the numbers grow, there is no possibility to cut the change, as needed, fast and with high percentage of the cases. We have to keep the numbers low enough for us to be able to operate.
And that means that if the numbers grow, if you can't cut the chain, what's the only effective tool then? A closure.
There's first of all, closure is a possibility. We're not talking in this stage about general closure like we witnessed during Passover holidays. Mm-hmm. But I do have to say that a combination of certain things. Our act in cutting the change, the behavior of the Israeli public, as you can see, there is slight improvement, but still we have a long way to go. We need more enforcement, supervision, whatever you want to call it, because we can't live with the fact that you'll easily push a button and find on social networks pictures of whatever weddings or parties where there is no resemblance of anything, even distantly reminding you of the rules of the health ministry. And I think that with all these things combined, and especially with special treatment of what we call the red areas, the red zones, we'll be able to probably stop this line of... But
you said you're an expert, not necessarily in health, but you're becoming one, I'm guessing, but with Israeli society. Was there really an expectation that Israelis would know to wear the masks, to social distance, and that's going to solve all the problems? It seemed that the government kind of, at some point, washed its hands of responsibility, said, okay, it's on you guys, and because you're not following the rules, now we're going to up the fines to 500 shekel if we catch you without a mask. But that's not what's going to solve the problem. We need a systemic solution here.
I think that as you can see, there is a massive Hasbara campaign, a massive campaign of the health ministry in order to explain to people that, you know, these simple measures can not just prevent them from getting sick, but it's also keeping their grandparents alive,
right.
No less than that. And as I said, enforcement is part of the story. Unfortunately, I didn't want to get there, but it's necessary. And yes, you know, I understand that there is a world problem, not just Israeli problem. The reports from countries like Britain or Italy that went through hell with this epidemic are that the moment the whatever you call it, once again, the seizure, the closure was a little bit loose, it's very difficult to enforce any rules. Right. That's the situation. People are used, especially in Israel, to a different situation. I always compare it to Yom Kippur War, one of the most terrible tragedies in our history. Difficult war, nearly 3,000 soldiers we lost in combat, ruined families. But then it's over, and you know, you kind of rebuild your family and you continue with your career. But this
doesn't end. This is staying with us.
This doesn't end.
So we have to learn as a society
to live with it, to live with it. And if we want to really continue living and developing and living normal social and professional life, we have to stick to simple rules.
Do you have an estimate when there might be a vaccine?
Those who are most optimistic are talking probably about April, May 2021. As I've said, most optimistic experts. There is no guarantee that it will happen. There is no guarantee that Israel will be in the first row of those who are getting the vaccine unless one of the Israeli developers will succeed. But we are not talking about near future. Those who are building on the vaccine in a couple of months from now don't know what they're talking about.
So I want to ask you, you were Speaker of Knesset for many years. You were touted as one of Israel's top statesmen, traveling around the world, speaking in parliaments around the world. You were spoken about as a potential candidate a year from now to become Israel's next president, a leading candidate. And then the reshuffle in the government, the national unity government with blue and white, excuse me, and you're health minister. So I have a couple of questions. First of all, it's unusual that someone of the caliber of being the Speaker of the Knesset goes to be the Minister of Health for a number of reasons. Number one, it's usually a ministry that's given to a lower level politician. And number two, we're in the middle of a crisis. Usually you don't see politicians run straight into a fire. They run away from a fire. No offense to politicians. And number three is I'm wondering, are you still planning maybe to run for the president when Reuven Rivlin's term ends? So that's a lot of questions in one.
First of all, health ministry was my choice. You're unfortunately absolutely right. It's unusual, or even probably the first case in the history of Israeli politics that like the first row politician from a ruling party is demanding this portfolio. Prime Minister offered me several choices, and I said to myself that, you know, if I'm leaving my comfort zone as Speaker of the Knesset for 7 years, with all that comes with the position, the total independence, the influence and whatever, and I'm crossing the street into the executive, into the government, I better do it for a good reason. And the good reason is a ministry that is in the middle of, you call it fire or combat or whatever. And I think that it's a huge challenge and it's huge responsibility. I do have to say that sometimes I wake in the middle of the night thinking how I deal with this and how I deal with that, because the health of Israelis, and you know, we're talking here sometimes about life and death matters. At the same time, I think that we have to remember that we should never waste a good crisis. And if there is a crisis, it also shows, on one hand, how strong Israeli health system is, the number of deaths, and don't misunderstand me, I'm crying over every case of death, never mind where, who, and how. But you know, if you take the statistics,
percentage-wise, we're doing well.
It's one of the lowest in the world, if not the lowest. And it's thanks to Israeli doctors and nurses that would never give up on a single patient. And we have cases of people who are 90 plus years old with lots of diseases, and they're being brought back to life after Corona. So this is on one end. On the other hand, I think there are as it's obvious to everyone, there are lots of things to take care of in the Israeli health system. And this is, as I've said, don't waste a good crisis. This is probably the right moment. I'm just trying to run it this way that I will have enough time for dealing with Corona, and at the same time enough time for preparing for the budget for the next year and taking care of deeper issues.
The potential race for the president? Is that at all?
It's not on the agenda. I'm in the health ministry. I'm, as I've said, in the middle of the combat, middle of the crisis. I think it's quite clear that it would be very strange for me right now to start thinking about future careers, the future positions. You know what, it will be kind of betraying those who are with me right now on the front, the people in the ministry, people in hospitals, in Kupot Cholim, in Israeli medical system. I think that's a very problematic approach.
Right. Health Minister Yuli Edelstein, first interview, if I'm not mistaken, to the Israeli press. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.